You know, it is my personal belief that there's a lot of people out there who should really shut the fuck up. Now, mainly, I contribute these people to being right-wing political figureheads and puppets for the GOP and their like-minded lobbyists, or just awful representatives like Major Taylor Greene. But there's someone else in particular who I have an even bigger disdain for, and that is HBO host Bill Maher, who is the most insufferable, unfunny, talentless hack who currently exists on television outside of Tucker Carlson, obviously. For those of you who are fortunate enough to have parents who didn't watch Real Time with Bill Maher is a comedian who started his show in 2003 and has been unfortunately continuing to this very day. Prior to that though, he had another show on Comedy Central called Politically Incorrect, where he would follow the same formula as his current show, where he would have a couple people on and then have these roundtable discussions of current political events. The difference of the new show being that he focuses more on activists and people within the political world versus Politically Incorrect was that of comedians. The thing that they both have in common is that Bill Maher is the host, so they are all equally unfunny. Getting into his politics a bit, Bill Maher has described himself as a, quote, liberal but a sane person. He's an environmentalist, but he supports capitalist ideals. He's the co-owner of the fucking Mets. And again, while he says he's very liberal and he is progressive in some avenues, for example, his views on prostitution being legalized as well as cannabis, he is very much neoliberal and is very much against political correctness and, quote, woke culture. Now, within my experience, the people who are against this woke culture have some shit to hide and are generally pretty shitty people because political correctness is just, it's fucking easy. It's easy to not be racist in a joke. It's easy not to be homophobic or sexist and still be funny. It's of my belief that as a comedian, you should be able to do this. And if you rely on these racial tropes and stereotypes to get your laughs, then you are an unfunny hack. Well, that's exactly what Bill Maher does, and we're gonna be seeing it in this video where Bill Maher takes brave shots at the LGBTQ community. This one's a fucking dumpster fire, so let's just get into it. I've been stalling long enough.
And finally, new rule: if something about the human race is changing at a previously unprecedented rate, we have to at least discuss it. Broken down over time, the LGBT population of America seems to be roughly doubling every generation. According to a recent Gallup poll, less than 1% of Americans born before 1946, that's Joe Biden's generation, identify that way. 2.6% of boomers do, 4.2% of Gen X, 10.5% of millennials, and 20.8% of Gen Z. Which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054.
So before I start, I just need to point this out. One of my favorite YouTubers, Eddie Burback, last year put out a video on Bill Maher. Thank you, Eddie. But in it, he had talked about how this man will purposely just get really stoic and wait for applause. And ever since he has fucking said this, I can't unsee it. The man, he will not talk until he gets his, his peanut gallery to just show how great of a comedian he is. Awesome, Bill. So beyond looking at Bill Maher and his narcissistic tendencies, I want to go into the Gallup poll that he actually cites in this joke. So in it, it obviously shows that 1 in 5 Gen Z are identifying as LGBT, which for starters, fantastic. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad we live in a country where it is acceptable and people feel comfortable enough to be more expressive about their sexuality. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And maybe, Bill, if you did a little critical thinking, you would remember that in Joe Biden's generation, LGBT was heavily stigmatized. And in fact, it was heavily stigmatized until my generation was of about my age. You didn't have all these LGBT protections even 10 years ago. I think we're forgetting the fact gay marriage was federally legalized in 2015, and even today is still under attack, which I'll get into later. Maybe that's why more people feel comfortable coming out, Bill. And looking further into this study, they don't show the demographics they use. They do say that they interviewed 12,000 people, which again, good sample size. However, if you're not showing the demographics in terms of the areas that these people were from, the disparity in the groups in terms of like how many silent generation people they interviewed versus Gen X versus Gen Z, and more importantly, the people who are going to sign up for these polls are generally going to be more politically active. Who the fuck knows Gallup poll if you're not interested in this? But of course you can just leave all that out and make it look like there's this rapid, scary shift in the LGBT boogeyman that Bill Maher likes to perpetuate, apparently, on his shitty HBO show, because no cable news network would ever let someone like that on primetime TV.
I'm just saying that when things change this much, this fast, people are allowed to ask, what's up with that?
I mean, yeah, you're allowed to ask, but who really gives a shit? Doesn't really concern you, unless you are secretly LGBT, Bill, and I mean, that's completely fine. You'd be welcome with open arms. But who the fuck cares? Like, who actually cares if people want to identify as LGBT or not? Yeah, the only people who should care are the people who are coming out. Because it's not easy to do. It's still stigmatized in many parts of the world and within the United States. So you can ask your questions, but then those people can respectively tell you to fuck off.
All the babies are in the wrong bodies? Was there a mix-up at the plant, like with Captain Crunch's Oops, All Berries?
Transphobia, funny, Bill. Fucking loser.
It wasn't that long ago when adults asked a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? They meant what profession?
You gotta love how this not only blatantly transphobic rhetoric is allowed on his show, and HBO is giving him the green light for this. But it's also funny because he was talking about LGBT and he's just focusing in on these Republican talking points of, oh, there's only two genders, oh, the kids are taking any gender they want these days. You're not a liberal who's a sane person, you're a fucking Republican. And for you to say that you are a liberal and that you are progressive is a fucking farce. Or maybe you are very liberal, as in neoliberal, as in those 90s Democrats who might as well be centrist Republican. You're an absolute joke to the Democratic Party, as well as anyone who even considers themselves remotely progressive. Please stop labeling yourself as such if you are okay with this blatant transphobic rhetoric.
In the wake of America about to lose abortion rights, the ACLU recently tweeted a list of those who would be disproportionately harmed by this. You would think women might top that list? No, wasn't even on the list. Second on the list was LGBT. Really? Abortion rights affects gay and trans people more than, breeders?
First off, breeders, Bill? Fucking ew. How about we don't refer to women as breeders, you fucking weirdo? Secondly, does Bill not realize that trans people have to go through pregnancy sometimes as well? Transitioning genders, that's still a thing that happens, Bill. As much as you want to disrespect the community. And 3, does he not realize that Roe v. Wade was an instrumental part of why gay marriage was even legalized in the first place, and that was a real precedent that was set that allowed for the eventual allowance of gay marriage, and the fact that Clarence Thomas, one of the Supreme Court justices and one of my least favorite people, said that he could use this ruling to re-examine the ruling on same-sex marriage, you know. And lastly, is this dude fucking stupid? Of course women are the most affected by it. It's fucking abortion. The ACLU pointed out these groups because these are marginalized groups that are gonna be unrepresented or underrepresented in this whole crisis, that there needs to be a spotlight shown on to make sure that they don't fall by the wayside during this ongoing, social movement to restore Roe v. Wade. This guy is so fucking stupid and full of himself. He really thought he did something there. It's like, oh, like, wouldn't women be the most affected? No fucking shit, Sherlock. No, this is why they pay you the big bucks, huh, Bill? Real Sherlock Holmes.
I'm happy for LGBT folks that we now live in an age where they can live their authentic lives openly. And we should always be mindful of respecting and protecting. But someone needs to say it. Not everything's about you.
I completely agree, Bill. And that's why I'm making this video. To call you out for being blatantly transphobic on your extremely popular show on HBO, where you make millions of dollars. Nothing says let's respect and protect like making transphobic jokes 2 minutes ago, and then now saying not everything's about you. Completely undermining the struggles that LGBT have and will have to go through due to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You're not an ally. Stop pretending to take this moral high road. Just stop. You're an absolute piece of shit. How you can say this kind of rhetoric on TV and then backtrack to make yourself look better, it's beyond me. It really is, and HBO and you should both be ashamed of yourselves for allowing this kind of thing to get on your show.
And it's okay to ask questions about something that's very new and involves children. The answer can't always be that anyone from a marginalized community is automatically right, trump card, mic drop, end of discussion. Because we're literally experimenting on children. Maybe that's why Sweden and Finland have stopped giving puberty blockers to kids.
It's funny that you mentioned hormone blockers, Bill, and how Sweden rejects the usage of them, because this is actually highly controversial within the country. This is because the use of hormone blockers on trans adolescents is actually fairly well researched. It is a known fact that it is a life-saving procedure due to the vast risk that trans children and trans adolescents have towards potentially committing suicide. Now, you wouldn't want to mention that. You want to say, oh, they're experimenting on kids. Well, according to a study which had been done over 50 years in Sweden, which looked at over 750 trans individuals, there was less than 2% of them said that they regretted the transition. Less than 2%, Bill. That means, according to this study, this procedure actually benefited and probably saved the lives of many of those that were glad they transitioned.
Because we just don't know much about the long-term effects. Although common sense should tell you that when you reverse the course of raging hormones, there's going to be problems. We do know it hinders the development of bone density, which is kind of important if you like having a skeleton.
Bone density is important. Completely agree with you. And that's why I looked into this too. Now, before I get into, the actual science of it, let's look at the actual source that you claim, which is The Times, which is a London-based newspaper which leans politically conservative, and as of right now are supporting the Tories, aka the party of Boris Johnson. Now, going even beyond this, I looked up just a blanket statement, bone density, puberty blockers, and after shifting through 100 different Christian blogs in which they denounce transgender people in their entirety, I got to the Mayo Clinic. And in this, they said a long-term effect may may include bone density growth. And if that is the case, there is other types of hormones that can be taken. Just leave out the may. You know, it's like when you have a medical ad, right? And the medicine may include seizures and death. It might, but it might not. It's different in every case. So stop trying to use this protect the children argument when you're talking about transitioning.
Fertility and the ability to have an orgasm seem also to be affected. This isn't just a lifestyle decision, it's medical.
No fucking shit, Bill. I mean, anyone who goes for this knows that it's not a fucking lifestyle choice. You know, you don't wake up one day and go, hey, you know what's really cool to do in 2022? To go to my old doctor's house and pick up some hormone blockers. Are you fucking daft?
Weighing trade-offs is not bigotry. Yet when a book questioning the sudden uptick in transitioning children was released, a trans lawyer with the ACLU named Chase Strangio tweeted, "Stopping the circulation of this book and these ideas is 100% a hill I will die on." How very civil liberties of him.
Oh, you mean Irreversible Damage? The transgender craze seducing our daughters by Abigail Shrier? The same lady who went before the Senate to oppose the Equality Act and use hypotheticals such as preschoolers who are transitioning being a danger to other preschool girls in classrooms? You mean that book? The book that's been heavily cited as anti-trans for purposefully misgendering people throughout it and also basing pretend scientific evidence in ways that were just hypothetical questions and pretend metaphors that she came up with in her head as straw man argument to further demonize the transgender community? And you're surprised that a transgender lawyer would want to go after that because, hey, maybe he felt offended by this book because this book further demonized his community. And that is also working against civil liberties because we're like, oh yeah, well they're banning free speech. But it's hate speech. The stuff in this book is hate rhetoric. This woman is going out of her way to oppose the rights of transgender people. If that's not civil liberties for people, I don't know what the fuck is, Bill. Maybe before you write these jokes, you should have your writers actually do a little bit of research. This took me 5 minutes. 5 minutes of research of just fucking around on Google to find this stuff. And also let it be known that she's an opinion person. She's one of those people who does the editorials for the Wall Street Journal, again, a very conservative newspaper. You fucking muppet. So maybe do your own damn research before you blast this shit off on TV.
Chase, by the way, has just been named one of the grand marshals of this year's New York City Pride March, along with 3 other trans people and a lesbian. Huh, what's missing here? Oh, right, a gay man. That's where we are now. Gay men aren't hip enough for the gay pride parade. Compared to trans, gay is practically cis, and cis is practically Mormon.
Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Who the fuck cares? The panel of people who elect those who will be grand marshals of the gay pride parade chose the people that they thought would be best at the job and who should be celebrated. What the fuck are you talking about? Bill, you're not in this community. You're not LGBT. Why the fuck do you care so much? It's starting more and more to seem, and this is something I said at the very beginning, and I've been saying for a while, and I'm gonna continue saying, that Bill Maher is a transphobic hack. He does not care for the LGBT community. He's not progressive. He's just an asshole. And he's afraid of people who are not like him. It's disgusting behavior, and the fact that he can be so anti-trans and demonize them on a legitimate platformed TV show that is supposed to be political in nature. And by the way, must I say that people in the DNC actually listen to this fucking guy, because in 2022, he needed to go on the air and say that he would not be running for president. And thank fucking God for that. Thank God we don't have an asshole like him running. I mean, sure, everyone else who's running is equally problematic, but fuck Bill Maher. Fuck this clown.
And this is a phenomenon we need to take into account when we look at this issue. Yes, part of the rise in LGBT numbers is from people feeling free enough to tell it to a pollster, and that's all to the good. But some of it is, it's trendy. Penis equals man? Okay, boomer.
What the fuck is this guy talking about? What the hell is this guy talking about? Does he realize that trans men exist? What do you mean, like, penis equals not trendy? Okay, boomer. Get out of here with that fucking bullshit. Are you kidding? Yeah, it's super trendy to, be born into a body that's not your own and having to deal with the struggle of realizing that the identity that you have to live with because society deems that's what you are is not who you are. And you need to constantly go through this, and you're at a way higher rate of murder, rape, way higher rate of suicide, depression, and anxiety, and just having to deal with the general day-to-day discomfort of not being in your own skin. What the fuck is this guy talking about? This ain't some goddamn TikTok trend. This is just blatant transphobia, as I've said a million times right now. The word's almost losing its meaning, I'm saying it so much. But Bill Maher, like, what in good God were you thinking when you put this out there? How can you live with yourself putting this on live TV? Like, so many people struggle with this, and this is a constant battle. There are so many people who end up taking their own lives over this. There are so many people who struggle because no one believes in what they're saying because of people like you. This is vile. To make a statement like that is absolutely vile. And again, you should be ashamed of yourself. And if I was an executive at HBO, I would be taking a close look into the show and what you say on it.
Remember, the prime directive of every teen is anything to shock and challenge the squares who brought you up. It's why nobody gets a nose ring at 56. And if you haven't noticed that with kids, doing something for the likes is more important than their own genitals, you haven't been paying attention. Dr. Erica Anderson is a prominent 71-year-old clinical psychologist who is herself transgender and who now says, I think it's gone too far. The LA Times summarizes, she's come to believe that some children identifying as trans are falling under the influence of their peers and social media.
So once again, Bill just shows a flashy headline and moves the fuck on. So I decided to look more into Erica's story and what made her come to these conclusions. And from what I learned, Erica, who herself, again, is a transgender woman, has helped hundreds of teens transition over the years. She states that she is worried that social media is having an effect that is causing more kids to want to transition. Okay, but that's fucking it. Nowhere in anything does she provide any concrete information or concrete statistical data to back up these points. She just merely states that you cannot disregard social media and overall, society and societal pressure from teen to teen from kids wanting to transition. And her gone too far statement comes from the fact that pediatricians have been giving kids testosterone without having them meet with a psychiatrist or a psychologist first. Which, even excluding all that, it's just a straw man argument. It's all just straw men. There's no concrete data to back this up. So Bill, maybe before projecting this information out there, maybe wait until someone does an actual, deep dive into the subject. Don't just pull shit out of your ass or pull blurbs from the LA Times, which you probably didn't fucking read, or if you did, you blatantly disregard information within it, or lack thereof, and blast it on your fucking TV show.
If you attend a small dinner party of typically very liberal upper-income Angelenos, it is not uncommon to hear parents who each have a trans kid having a conversation about that. What are the odds of that happening in Youngstown, Ohio? If this spike in trans children is all natural, why is it regional? Either Ohio is shaming them or California is creating them.
Bill Maher, once again proving himself to be an idiot, completely negates the fact that Ohio has a higher percentage of Republicans than California does. And maybe those liberal families that are having dinners are more accepting of their kids who want to be trans than, say, highly Christian parents in Ohio who may demonize or make their kids who want to become trans either stay as they are, refusing to allow them to get treatment, or kicking them out of their damn house, which happens quite often. Like, this isn't brain surgery, this isn't rocket science, this is common sense. Areas that are more accepting will have higher amounts of people in marginalized groups like the LGBT feeling more comfortable to come out to their parents. I mean, if anything, this shows how loving those parents would be to those kids, and how accepting they would be.
It's like that day we suddenly all needed bottled water all the time. If we can't admit that in certain enclaves there is some level of trendiness to the idea of being anything other than straight, then this is not a serious science-based discussion.
What's not science-based? Everything you've just been saying? Because all you've been saying is just hateful rhetoric this whole time. Not one thing that you have said has been backed up by any degree of science whatsoever, and all stems from your own personal biases against transgender folk. Bill Maher at this point just kind of goes on more with just some general bullshit, but nothing concrete enough that I really care or want to listen to, so I'm gonna end it here. So what's the conclusion to all of this, right? Fuck Bill Maher. It's really that simple. I'm sorry that this video wasn't as, lighthearted, but it just pisses me the fuck off that this guy has a platform, and frankly, he just annoys me a lot, so I wanted to talk about him. Well, that's it. See ya.